Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kindred Skulls. My name is Gregg Blake. I am joined this week, as always, with my lovely and talented and brilliant co-host, Nick Olson. How are you this evening?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Gregg?
I'm doing well. I didn't lead with the song this week. I'm not feeling very singy, you know? Not a lot of music in my heart this week.
Different vibe after that one.
Definitely different vibe.
Yeah.
Matt, how are you? Matt Freese, everybody, how are you this evening?
Not doing too bad, Greg. I mean, outside of the Vikings, things are going pretty well. So.
Outside of the Vikings, you know?
It is what it is.
Story of my life.
Story of my life.
I was gonna say, like, that's a refrain I think we can all use pretty much every year in our lives. So, outside of the Vikings, things are going great, actually. If I just didn't have these guys in my life, maybe I'd be a happier person. But so obviously, you know, if you've been living under a rock, our reactions at the start of this episode should clue you in on the result that we experienced this week. We had a big loss to the San Francisco 49ers. I wouldn't say they kicked our ass necessarily, but they definitely beat us pretty resoundingly, depending on how you look at it. Guys,
technically another one-score loss. Technically
another one-score loss. We only lose one-score games.
Before we started recording, Matt and I were talking about that very fact, that this was another game that felt exactly the same. I feel like I have sat on this couch over here and watched the same game on repeat for weeks, and it's like it's sort of funny, but it's also sort of really, really frustrating. Like, I almost would rather that we just get our clocks cleaned one week or just destroy the opponent one week, just like something a little fucking different. Excuse my language, but I'm just like, I'm getting pretty tired of this, man. I'm getting tired of, like, it's starting to just wash over me. I'm just like waiting for the fourth quarter. Like, nothing that happens in the first three quarters matters.
It was pretty funny. They put the graphic up that, wow, the Vikings are the only team to have like a 7-point lead in every game. This was after their first touchdown. And I was like, well, can't wait to see how we screw it up this time. And lo and behold, once the clock hit like the 2 minutes remaining in the first half, all hell broke loose, and then started the third quarter, like two straight turnovers or whatever. So yeah, it was rough.
Brutal. I'm going to be flying mostly on fumes this week, guys, in terms of my memory of it, because maybe for that very reason. You know, I think there's a phenomenon to describe this. I'm sure there's a word for it in psychology, where you experience the same thing over and over to the point where if something different happens while you're experiencing the pattern, you don't even notice because you're just having the same pattern. There's going to be all kinds of little...
It's like, there's like a thing in psychology where if you're touching something, like when you first put your hand on something, you notice that, right? But then as you get used to it, it goes away. Right. That's what the Vikings have been. Yeah, I forget what that's called.
That's the 2021 Minnesota Vikings. The thing you touch and forget is there. I like that. Super disappointing. I can't even... I guess let's just get into it. Do we want to talk about our emotions watching the game first? Like, you know,
same as every other week.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Same as every other week. I think getting into it a little bit, like, it was kind of, the way this game felt to me was kind of interesting, because I think the teams were kind of mirrors of each other. Ultimately, like, the 49ers lived off of explosive plays. They did have the one long drive at the end of the half, and then they had the long drive at the end of the game. But there were a lot of short drives that we held the 49ers to pretty quickly, and they punted, right? There were probably 3 or 4 of those where they ended up punting after, you know, maybe one first down or a 3 and out. And we held them in check pretty well. But on the drives,
especially in the beginning of the game, when it was when they were not running the ball and they were trying to let Jimmy beat us, I was like, oh, this might go our way. Because for that very reason, like, wasn't working.
So the first touchdown, I think, was a long Ayuk reception on like third down or something that kind of got that drive rolling. Obviously the Debo touchdown. And then they had the one touchdown off the turnover. And then the other one, you know, and they had a field goal off the turnover, and then they had the other long touchdown drive, which, I mean, that 3rd and 8 penalty, going back to it, is like really a turning point in the game, I feel like, it was kind of a killer, right? Because we get the ball with 3 minutes left. If we don't have that penalty, they're going to punt it. We get the ball with like 3.5 minutes left. Hopefully you get a chance to drive down the field. It's not a 2-minute situation where we're desperate and we can afford to like manage the clock poorly for a little bit.
And to be clear, like Matt's talking about the Patrick Peterson holding call when George Kittle just fell over at the end of the first half, right?
Yep. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Which was second week in a row Patrick Peterson's been called for defensive holding on, I think, third down, and it was a BS call. Like, it wasn't
I'm not a huge fan of that call right there. And then before you know it, they've scored 21 points in a row because we should have called timeout probably at the end of the second quarter. I mean, I think it's a little bit more debatable, but we probably should have not gotten the ball back with 18 seconds left or whatever we had. And then they score off of the open kickoff with a couple explosive plays, and then Kirk throws the interception and they score a touchdown one play later, and we're down 21 points. And we've had like one offensive play we've had like 3 offensive plays in the interim. So which, that again, really crushed us.
Going back to this theme of the year, this has been a big problem for us this year, is scoring in bunches or doing well in pockets, and then having long stretches of the game where we're totally ineffective.
Yeah.
And the offense flips the game.
It's funny. The offense did a lot of good things. I thought when you go back and you check the tape, but it's just so boom or bust. And this has kind of been the problem we've been diagnosing all year, is like they either have touchdown drives or they go 3 and out. We had 4 touchdown drives, which is like, that's pretty good. You should win most games where you put up 4 touchdowns. If you punch it in 4 times, 28 points, you'll win most games. But there were 2 drives we went 3 and out in the first half. That we had 2 touchdowns, 2 3 and outs, and 1 other drive where we got 1 first down. So 1 first down across 3 drives, and then 2 other touchdown drives. Like, it's just so boomer. But and then the second half, we had first drive, Kirk comes out, throws an interception because he throws it right to a linebacker, just like bizarre brain fart interception from Kirk Cousins. And then we have another drive where it's 1 play and it's the fumble, like Oli Udoh runs into Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook unfortunately gets injured. It's like classic Vikings blow up play. We can't just turn the ball over. We have to like lose our best player and turn the ball over at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
It's pretty brutal. So, but then, we come back and we have two other drives that we march all the way down the field and then just turn the ball over on downs. So it's an offense that's like either they're really clicking or they're not. And I think part of the problem this week was the run game really couldn't get going. I mean, Dalvin had one really good 30-yarder, and I think he had 1 yard per carry on his other 9 carries or whatever before he got hurt. So that was tough. And then, it's just a lot of the same, whether it's the over-reliance on quick game. I thought there was some of that this game, but I think they are trying to throw it downfield a little bit more, and they're smarter about it. But Kirk was also a little inaccurate this game, where there were a couple throws that he probably wished he would have had back.
That to me was a big thing this week was, when games are tight like this, which is where we've lived, it really comes down to, in basketball, this happens way more than in football, but like, it comes down to like, when you look at it and after the fact, you're like, that play there, that play there, that play there, like that was, if it goes the other way, you win the game. Like if you complete the 2-point conversion, if you get the ball, just a little bit more arc on that ball to JJ in the back of the end zone. There's just little things like that. And unfortunately for Kirk, a lot of that came down to him this week, and he really heard it from the fans. And I think it's pretty deserving. And I've made a really concerted effort not to be anti-Kirk on this show, because I think it would get tiresome. And I'm not going to do it this week, because I think, again, it's another team failure. Like, it's not just on him, but I mean, there's a reason that he's getting heat this week, and it comes down to those little individual moments.
Yeah. So I don't think Kirk was necessary. Okay. So accepting the very obvious, like, he did not see the linebacker right on that interception.
Who's an enormous linebacker.
That's one where it's not like
that man is huge.
That's not one where Kirk's like unnecessarily taking risk. That's just something where it's like, okay, this happened. Like, it'll very occasionally happens to quarterbacks. It probably happens to Kirk a little bit too much for what you would want of a player of his pay grade, right? But it's totally his fault.
It's his third interception of the year. So
but it's his third interception.
You can't knock him too much. It's really bad, but it happens.
So outside of that, I don't think any of his decision-making processes were like
I do find it interesting that you referred to his pay grade and not his abilities.
Well, I mean,
it was a very interesting Freudian word slip, I think.
Well, I think he's a good quarterback, and he's generally worth the contract that he gets. But like, there are just these things that happen to him. It seems like, and it's almost unquantifiable. It's definitely unquantifiable from like a numbers perspective, because he comes out looking really good in the numbers pretty much everywhere you look at it.
I mean, hell, I mean, even this week, it's not horrible. I mean,
it was a bad game for Kirk. It wasn't a disaster. There are MVP quarterbacks this year, quarterbacks in the MVP conversation who have had worse games. I mean, Lamar Jackson threw 4 interceptions on Sunday night. Kirk hasn't thrown 4 interceptions all year.
I don't think he's done that in years. I don't really remember the last time.
I don't know. It was just there were uncharacteristic misses for him in this game, just from an accuracy. Like that 2-point play to JJ, it was like he knew immediately as soon as he left his hand that it must have slipped, or it was just wrong coming out of his hand, because he knew where he wanted to go. Like it was a correct decision. He made the correct call. He just wasn't able to execute the throw. And I don't think that's something that'll be repeatable necessarily, or something that's predictable when it crops up again as an issue, right? So it's not something I'm really worried about moving forward, but it's just, it certainly wasn't his best game.
Right. Yeah. Every quarterback has bad games. Kirk was overdue for his. He hasn't had a bad game all year. So, I mean, and there are quarterbacks who could win. Like Kirk played not great. I think there are a lot of quarterbacks who put up a Kirk level performance of this week and their team would still win. The Vikings are not a team that can win games, especially against a good team like the 49ers, when Kirk Cousins isn't on his best. So ultimately, it was bad. Will he take too much flack for it? Probably, but also at the same time, he kind of deserves it when he throws the ball straight to a linebacker and then lines up under the guard on a crucial 4th down. He brings these things upon himself.
And again, I can't believe I'm the one saying this, but it's so unfair too, because there are Hall of Fame quarterbacks who have done that. You can go online, you can find YouTube videos of major quarterbacks making that very mistake. Yep. But you compound it with all these other issues, and his body language is a little weird, and he makes these weird faces, and he's just a
little weird,
He's a goober.
That's where
he's a goober. That's just the reality of it. We have a goober behind center. Is there anything else offensively that you guys noticed this week that maybe people haven't really been talking about, like someone who couldn't get open? KJ Osborne, I don't even remember being involved this week that much. I think he had 1 catch that I remember. It's a pretty good catch.
He had the phantom or the not pass interference call at the end of the game where they didn't call it. But I don't know. KJ, I think, has been the same thing as recent weeks, where we've just gone to our star wide receivers more than him. And it's not like he's not doing the same thing. It's just he hasn't been the main target.
So you say offensively.
I wrote that article about how he was breaking out, and he decided now he's got to cut back and let Jefferson run.
Gonna put some egg on Nick's face. Nobody has more egg on their face than me and Kenny Wangu this year.
On the offense, I'll say one other thing that stood out when I watched the broadcast. I kind of thought the 49ers had their way with our offensive line, and I was surprised when I went back and rewatched the All-22. I don't really think that was the case. I think actually the offensive line did a pretty good job holding up, especially against Nick Bosa. There's a lot of scheme stuff they did to help there, but I thought the interior offensive line, other than Oli Udoh, who had his mistakes were very loud, but overall I thought the line played well. And I thought that was going to be the biggest mismatch going into the game was 49, not just Bosa, but they have a lot of guys. So I feel like the losses stood out. Darrisaw let up a pretty bad sack to Bosa, but that was the only pressure Darrisaw let up all game. Bosa actually had his second lowest graded game of his career since Nick Bosa was a rookie. So offensive line, I thought, surprised me, which was good to see. It's good to see Mason Cole not being a disaster out there like he has been the last couple of weeks. It's good to see Ezra Cleveland taking a step up in the run game. Pro Football Focus actually had Ezra Cleveland as the highest graded offensive player in the entire league last week. I wouldn't go that high. I wasn't that impressed by him, but it was good. It was good. So,
I mean, he made at least one mistake in the game, so that's kind of an interesting one.
Man,
But
I
it is
don't know
what it
about
is.
that. There was some pretty good.
I will say, I
performances
agree.
in
I think
NFL last
watching
week.
it live, like the offensive line came back looking really bad because you had those splash plays that matter. Like particularly the Darisaw allowing the sack to Bosa where he lost immediately, and it was really rough. And then the Udo penalties. Watching it back, I would say they weren't great run blocking still. Like there were, I think that was a large part of like, honestly, every Alex Madison run was just the blocking was awful.
Yeah,
Notable that he
I'm a
scored
little
on
worried.
that like duo touchdown where just like he got the ball, looked ahead of him, and was like, screw
Yeah,
this.
I'm
There's
going
absolutely
that
nothing.
way.
I'm bouncing it outside. So
Yeah.
right decision with the way that blocking was going. Yeah.
Oh, Alexander. All right, so offensively, you know, we covered that. Defensively, I think the story of the game was our inability to stop the run. I think it's that simple.
Yep.
We knew, and we talked about this last week as part of our preview. If we can't stop the run, this team's gonna be really hard to beat. We don't stop the run; they're really hard to beat. It's not that complicated. They want to run the ball, and we were down 4 defenders on the line, and it looked pretty ugly. Not like eye-popping numbers if you're looking at the stat sheet, but I think it's more the way they controlled the game. You know, it was very. It didn't. I'll tell you.
So to me, honestly, Greg, it was the explosives. And if you go back and look at like each of the drives and just the plays on the drives, like, and not only just in the run game, in the passing game too, like the middle of the field was open all game. And that happened partly because of coverage busts. That happened partly because you're pulling your linebackers up and you're respecting the run quite a bit against the 49ers. And the other big thing was our tackling on defense, right? There was a lot of yak to be had both in the passing game, you know, yards after the catch and yards after contact from the running backs. But
in fairness, Elijah Mitchell is, I think, second in the NFL at that this year. At the running back position.
Shanahan is just so good at designing runs to go through large hole. Like you can be gap sound against Kyle Shanahan's running attacks, but like one guy his gap will be like on the edge will be like 3 yards wide or something. And like, that's his gap. But like, there's just like James Lynch, I thought had a good game, our backup defensive tackle, but there were a lot of like runs where like he's got an arm out, but he can only cover so much ground. And so there were a lot of guys getting explosives because, you know, the gap was covered, but they're running through an arm tackle because the gap is just that wide because Shanahan has so much misdirection that he really makes you cover sideline to sideline every single run play. So it's tough. So good play design from Shanahan. I mean, that whole team drafts guys specifically for this purpose, for after the catch and after contact and the run game. So it's just a tough passing attack. We mentioned going into this that like, we're down our entire starting defensive line. So this is probably not the best week for that to happen. And, you know, it did kick us in the butt a little bit. So.
Unfortunately, there are no magic bullets for the Minnesota Vikings this year. Nobody's stepping down out of the rafters and saving our ass.
Is Jimmy G continues to be like ridiculous on third downs. Like there are a lot of third and longs where they just guessed right on the protections or they picked up the blitz well and Jimmy G's just found a dude just in time downfield. So I thought overall Jimmy G didn't play that well. He had like a lot of like missed throws early on.
Yeah, like a lot of high throws.
Yeah, he was chucking that thing way over.
But when it came to like the money downs, there were a lot of like third and longs that I would have hoped we could have stopped, but we weren't able to. So.
Yeah, and that showed on the third downs, right? So if you look at their touchdown drives, the first one, 3rd and 13, they converted for 37 yards. The second one, that was the really long one before the half. 3rd and 11, they converted for 24 yards. The third one, they had the 49-yard run by Deebo Samuel, right? So all of their touchdown drives are based off of explosive plays, and 2 of those explosive plays came on third down.
That Deebo run was, man, oh man. He is special. Yeah, super bleak. Super bleak there on third down. And also, again, going back to the missed opportunities kind of theme, again, something that has kind of been a bugaboo for us this year, penalties.
What I wanted to add here, and like we lost this football game outright, right? But like the calls and the no calls came in like very critical situations where honestly, like the first Debo touchdown run, the 20-yard touchdown run, like there are 3 players getting held on that play. And especially the 2 at the point of attack, the one on Barr and Kendricks are borderline holds. But I've seen those holds called before, especially when it's at the point of attack on the play, right? And I don't know if Barr gets there, but I think Kendricks gets to Debo if he doesn't get held on that play. Yeah. That could have been a penalty. The 3rd and 8 that extended the drive, they punt if that penalty doesn't get called. And it's really just, I mean, hell, it could be a block downfield by Kittle, right? Like, I have a really hard
offensive
time.
Pass interference. He just bulldozes Peterson into the ground and they trip, and that's
I have a really hard time describing that as defensive holding. And then the KJ Osborne non-call on the PI later in the game, you know, I don't think we're coming back and winning the game at that point, but like, you know, it's just very visible moments, right? And then there was the one
where the Adam Thielen not catch that kind of was a cat. Like there's a lot. It's tough to complain about the refs because like George Kittle is right. You should make better plays and it shouldn't come down to whining about the refs. Like that's never a good look. But at the same time, like it's just kind of a fact that when the calls went against us, they happened in very crucial moments, and that was swing games. So
it totally swings games. And of course, you know, Kittle should say that because he's out there risking life and limb to play the game. But like from our perspective, when we're sitting there and
Mike Zimmer kind of has a point when he says they were holding the whole game.
Yeah. And he also said that that's basically their strategy is that, well, we're going to do it sort of like the Seahawks did back in the day with the Legion of Boom. Like we're going to do it every play and you call some and whatever, we'll eat the penalty once in a while, but you're not going to call it every play because you'll ruin the game. It's sort of a gamesmanship, on their part. But it bit us a little bit this week. The penalties did. So I think, is there anything else, generally that you guys want to talk about, or should we?
Normally, I think offense and defense tell the whole tale of the game. I don't think you can get away from this game without talking about Kene Nwangwu breakout season. He's the first kick returner in 5 years since Cordero Patterson 5 years ago to have multiple kickoffs returned for a touchdown, and he's only had 8 all year. How crazy is that?
Crazy.
Really, really well blocked up. And the other thing is he almost had a second one in the game. There was another one, a 40-yarder before at the end of the first half, where he actually evaded a tackle from the kickoff guy, and there was one other guy on the end who made the tackle. But
that run was more like the blocking was really good on the return touchdown. That return was probably more impressive, like from a Nwangwu perspective than the touchdown run was.
He's really impressive as a kick returner. Not sure I'm ready to call him worth that pick yet, but he's getting there. He's definitely getting there.
2 touchdowns manufactured in 8 touches.
I mean, all seriousness,
he's gonna be one of the few Pro Bowlers on this team, so we have to appreciate him.
You guys know this about me. I'm totally willing to let go of my takes when they're completely wrong. I'm getting there with Ken.
And Nwangwu is averaging 7 yards per carry in the NFL.
Now Nwangwu, that's because he has 1 touch. But I want to talk about that because with Dalvin going down, which, for me is personally very devastating. He's one of my favorite players, and I really hope that it's not a long-term thing and all that. But it's an opportunity here for Kene, and I would love to see him get some touches because he's a lot bigger than I thought he was, bulkier, and taller than I thought he was. I really like his running style. He looks like he's going to be very aggressive. I would love to see him get some touches this week in Dalvin's absence. And we definitely need the help because, Madison's been a little shaky this year. So I hope he gets some touches, makes that pick worth it.
I would love for them to manufacture like jet sweeps and little just use his speed to your advantage out there. Absolutely. So I think there are ways you can manufacture like a Tyler Urban type role. I think you could manufacture touches for him out there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I would say I would prefer us to use him on early downs and do things like the jet sweeps and stuff like that, kind of manufacturing touches, maybe screens, something like that. Yep. Because the one thing, and I think Zimmer mentioned in his press conference today, the big question mark with him is pass protection. I don't think he's very good at it. I mean, he is not experienced at it at all. And that matters a lot on third down What you saw in this game, even I think, or in the Packers game, there were the big explosive play to Justin Jefferson at the beginning of the game does not happen if Dalvin Cook doesn't properly pick up the blitz and pass protection. So the Vikings need their running backs to pass protect. And Madison's a very good pass protector. I don't want him off the field on third down for Wongwu necessarily.
Give Kenny the ball.
Yes.
All right. All right, guys, it's time for a little bit of tape talk. It's time for the stars of the show to take us away here. Where do you guys want to start? What do you want to start with? I'm leaving it up to you this week.
So we brought up the running game a little bit, and I kind of want to go into a little bit more detail in terms of how that worked out, because the Vikings really had to change up their approach to the run game, right? With Dalvin Tomlinson out, I think they were a lot more aggressive, and Lynch was a big part of that. The linebackers were a big part of that, or the defensive line in general was more attempting to shoot gaps rather than hold gaps. Like Dalvin Tomlinson and Michael Pierce, but like Dalvin Tomlinson is very good at keeping linebackers free, right? And holding the line of scrimmage. You saw a lot more penetration from the Vikings in this game, and it actually bears out with the numbers. So I took a look at, the number of plays in the backfield that we made or 0-yard gains that we had in this game. We had 5 of those, and that doesn't count Jimmy's 2 kneel downs. That's the most we've had in a single game this season. And, I obviously they had a bunch of rushes, but we were still higher, like significantly higher than our average rate. On the flip side of that, when we got into the backfield, but we didn't make the play, we let up a ton of explosive plays. Prior to this game, we'd only let up 2 20-plus yard runs on the season. There was a third one. It was a Sam Darnold scramble, so I don't really count that as a design run, right? We'd only let up 2 so far this year. We let up 2 in this game to Debo, right? The first one, Nick Vigil had a shot at Debo in the backfield, or I'm sorry. The second one, Nick Vigil had a shot at Debo in the backfield. He missed him. Debo goes for 49 yards, right? So penetration there, but we weren't able to make the tackle.
Can I pause you for just a second?
Go ahead.
Because I having watched some Niners this year, and I've watched a pretty good chunk of them, I do wonder if that's more about them than it is about us. Because I think that what you're describing is something that I would say that it tracks for me, having watched Niners this year. Like,
yeah,
they do a lot of the old, 1 yard, -1, 2 yards, bam, like that's kind of their thing.
Yeah, and maybe it is. I didn't look at how the Niners compare to the league, but like we have been very good, and our run defense by like a lot of metrics has been bad this year, right? But we had been very good prior to this game at limiting explosive plays. We had allowed, I did the math on this, we had allowed 20-plus yard runs on 0.75% of plays, where the league average is 2%, and 10-plus yard runs on 8.6 when the league average is 10.6. So despite being like 30 something or 20 in the high 20s in DVOA and run defense, right, which is a play down to down metric, we were letting up 4, 5, 6 yard runs on a consistent basis, but we're not letting up explosive plays. That flipped where we got more backfield penetration in this game, and you can see it. You can see guys get into the backfield. We were running stunts in the run game. We were being aggressive against power with the linebackers, rather than being more passive and contacting guys at the line of scrimmage and then fall forward for a couple of yards, which is what our MO had been prior to this. So I think that change really, and I think that was based on personnel a little bit, but I also think that, like you said, Greg, it probably has to do with the way the 49ers block and they set up things just in terms of power and the misdirection and everything that they do.
Interesting observations, though, and maybe hopefully that keeps up this week and we actually make the tackles. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to go over on that?
That one, not really, but if we want to jump to the next one here, and Nick, you know what I'm talking about with this one, right? Where one play, Justin Jefferson, where it was a stack release.
Well, so set it up for us a little bit, Matt, because I know you've been obsessing over this play this week. So give us the full. This blew your mind.
It was third down, right? We motion Thielen into a stack release, right? We talked about stack release last week. It's just one wide receiver in front of the other. The way the 49ers defend this is they have Josh Norman, their corner, press Justin Jefferson, and they have a corner right behind him. Okay. And Justin Jefferson, like, this is absolute teach tape on how to beat press. I mean, it is one of the best single releases like I can remember seeing. So it's a really aggressive press by Norman. Jefferson, the big thing for Jefferson and the big thing with releases is you're able to keep your upper body and your lower body like disconnected, and they're able to do different things. So what he's able to do is move his feet forward while he's like leaning back to avoid it, right? And his long legs, like he's got like really long legs for how tall he is. So that makes a difference. It's like literally 3 steps and he's gone entirely around Norman. Like he has nice hand usage. He rips up under Norman's arm, which is on his shoulder, gets it off, leans back with that shoulder as he's ripping through, gets his feet out around, and then like stacks him. And there's another player like right there. So he basically runs a circle around Norman and avoids this other player that he could have run into by releasing to the outside. And it's just ridiculous that he obviously makes a nice like 20, 30 yard catch on that play and got a pass interference call because Norman held on to him because he beat him so
incredible. And if you want to see that play, it's on Matt's Twitter feed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Nick posted it too at some point.
Yeah. that was a "We'll Be Right Back" classic right there.
Yeah, that is a "We'll Be Right Back" classic.
It illustrates one of my favorite things about JJ from the jump is I think about JJ like a dancer. Like he reminds me of the way a dancer moves. Just it's almost like elegant. I don't know how else to describe it. He's not a football player sometimes. Sometimes he's out there just like dancing on people. It's really beautiful, honestly, to watch sometimes. Like he's pretty amazing.
He's got such a unique body type, and he's so like bendy and long. The Eurostep Gumby thing really does apply because he's long and bendy like Gumby, and he's so dangerous at the top of his routes with his little like Eurostep moves he brings in there, little rocker steps. And man, it's a privilege to watch him play, and things like that. Seeing Justin Jefferson dunk on bad cornerbacks will always make the Vikings watchable for me, no matter how painful it is.
It's one of the things that we as Vikings fans truly take for granted, and I include myself among. We always have great players, even if the team is not working and it's ugly and we're not enjoying it and all this. There's always great players on the Minnesota Vikings, and right now we have one of the truly bright shining stars in the NFL, and he's only 21 years old, 22 years old. So it's pretty awesome, man. We're right back to singing his praises on this show. Really should go watch that play, folks. Go to either one of their Twitter feeds. Go to both of their Twitter feeds. Give them both clicks. All right. So, Nick,
one other thing I wanted to talk about was, so Zimmer, I think the real problem for Mike Zimmer's defense this year is there's no Danielle Hunter, which is such a crucial loss over both last year and this year. There are so many defenses that are set up around one star pass rusher. And if they lose that star pass rusher, that's kind of it for the pass rush. Like, what would the 49ers be without Nick Bosa?
We saw that last year. But they struggled a lot last year when they were the best defense in the NFL 2 years ago, right? So
Or the Chargers without Joey Bosa, or a lot of teams like the Browns have guys, but like who would they be without Myles Garrett? Probably below average. So it's really tough to manufacture pressure, and that's really tough on the back end for the Vikings cornerbacks who can't always run with guys. They're very good if the pass rush can get home quickly, but if you give up like 3 seconds, the guys are going to get open downfield. So it's really tough, and I feel like not only is Zimmer dealing with that right now, but now Everson Griffin dealing with his mental health issues is on reserve as well. We've got it sounds like Michael Pierce and Dalvin Tomlinson might be back this week, which is great. But I think the real challenge for Zimmer is manufacturing pressure. And I think Zimmer, the mad scientist that he is, it's really interesting to see how he's going back to the lab, what concepts he's coming out with. I remember when we the Vikings signed Sheldon Richardson in the offseason for like $3 million. People were like, could he play edge? And I was like, I I don't really think so. I mean, we have like Stephen Weatherly, we have like DJ Wan. They're probably bendier, better guys. I don't really think Sheldon Richardson could like threaten the edge, and he can't. But he can bull rush guys, and he can counter inside nonetheless. So the way it's really interesting seeing the way they're scheming things up. I mean, Sheldon Richardson had multiple pass rush wins against Trent Williams, probably the first team All-Pro left tackle, best tackle in the NFL this year. Sheldon Richardson beat him multiple times, and so they're able to like come up with these interesting ways. We're seeing development from the young guys. I thought DJ Wanham, I'm a little disappointed that we haven't seen more of a leap from him this year, but he had a really good spin move that caused a sack later on in the game as well. So it's interesting to see Andre Patterson. I mean, Andre Patterson is such a technician when it comes to teaching guys, here's the guy you're going up against. Here's the thing he does. Here's how you can exploit it throughout the game. Here's how you need to position your hands and stuff. So I really feel like you can feel Andre Patterson's influence in the development of guys. I think most notably you see that James Lynch in the run game, but also Armon Watts in the pass rush game. Armon Watts now has a top 10 pass rush grade among starting defensive tackles. That's pretty special to see. He's not necessarily like a quick shoot the gap penetrator guy, but he's just so good with his hands. Like he'll keep his chest clean from whether it's swatting guys' hands up or pushing them down or ripping around. He's just like, he's gotten so very instinctual in his pass rush moves. So that's good to see because we're going to need somebody to be able to rush the passer. He had 6 pressures in this game against some pretty good interior offensive linemen too. So that's good to see. But all that is to say, like personnel wise, Zimmer is still down. So schematically, what is he doing to bring pressure? And I think it's interesting. We're seeing Barr as an actual defensive lineman more. Barr, I think, had a pressure early on in the game where he bull rushed a guard into Jimmy Garoppolo, which is, there aren't many linebackers who can do that. It's like the Kyle Van Noys of the world. And like the kind of like the quasi edge rusher / linebacker guys at 250 plus pounds at linebacker who can do that. You're not doing that with Eric Wilson. You're not doing that with Chaz Surratt. So it's good to see that. And then, the moving Sheldon Richardson outside, and also the things they're doing on the back end. We saw I think maybe 5 third downs. We actually played a dime package, which I'm not used to Mike Zimmer showing, but we showed, we had all 4 cornerbacks out there on top of the two safeties. So Dantzler was out there in addition to Mac, Peterson, and Breland. And I feel like this is sort of an extension of what we've seen a little bit with the 3 safety looks in the previous years, where it's kind of like a dime look where they're playing man coverage on the back end, and that allows Harry to be a robber. It's how we got that interception. And it also allows sort of, it allows, despite the fact that they're down on the defensive line, it allows the defense, I think, to put its best 11 guys out there, because you have Barr, Kendricks, 3 defensive linemen, and then you make up for the lack of pass rush with more bodies in the secondary, and you can scheme up a better defense that way, especially on third down. So I just think it's interesting to see the solutions that Zimmer comes up with when he's undermanned. And I feel like that's definitely the case this year, and it's been the case last year. So always interesting to see the ways he cooks things up to get to the quarterback, even if he has to do it with duct tape and a little bit of elbow grease.
Yeah, you still have 6 guys on the field at that point, with the defensive linemen, the 2 linebackers, and then Harrison Smith, who are like pass rush threats. Maybe Kendricks isn't as much of a threat, but like Barr and Smith are legitimately great blitzers. So that flexibility, while still being better on the coverage end at that point, is really helpful with that time package. I think it's cool.
No. Yeah. I mean, no matter what we've talked about as a fan base on the show, whatever this year, no matter what happens in the offseason, no matter any of it, I don't think anybody's ever going to make the argument that Mike Zimmer's not a Hall of Fame football coach.
Well,
like
I don't know about Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame.
Oh, I think he's a Hall of Famer.
He is a great defensive mind. Coordinators don't really.
This might be a debate we have to have sometime, because I would absolutely call Mike Zimmer.
I would say he's an elite defensive mind.
Yes,
but Hall of Fame voters are going to want to see
I think you might be forgetting some of the teams he was a part of. I mean, he's been in, I don't know, guys. But this is a conversation for another time.
Being like the DB's coach for the Cowboys doesn't count as much.
You coached
Don Coryell can't get in the freaking Hall of Fame. So
okay, fair enough. Well, he's a Hall of Fame level coach to me.
Hall of Fame to me.
And I think
our hearts.
To your point though, just that. I've never felt like he's not doing a good job as a coach this year, like in terms of keeping the team together, keeping them focused, coming up with wild schematic things every single week because of the wild things that are going to, I mean, how many coaches have to deal with, look, I agree with you 100%, Nick, is what I'm trying to say.
He's great on the scheme stuff, and he's great on the culture stuff. I mean, how many like times have the Vikings seem to be like kind of down and out, and he's
my God.
he knows when to press on his guys, and he knows when to like let up and be like, man, they show so much fight today. I'm so proud of these guys, even though the result wasn't the way we were. So I think
there's so many coaches.
Command of the locker room that I think there are other coaches, lesser culture coaches, less of player coaches, would have lost the locker room on these down years.
So adding to that point, there was a podcast that Eric Kendricks was on this week. It's with a guy, I forget the name of it's Chasing Edges, I think is the name of the podcast. It's an NFL player who does it, who played on the Vikings for like a year. He was like on our practice squad or something. I forget the guy's name, but he played for like the Texans for like 3 years, where he actually played football. And he was saying like the Vikings locker room is the best locker room environment he's been in, just in terms of like how people connect with each other. And Kendricks is like, yeah, this is great. Like I love being in the locker room and having those conversations every day. So we talk a lot about how Zimmer wears on players, and I think his personality can be grating to some, but I think he's brought together a pretty solid culture overall on the team.
Yeah. My issues with Zim and have really nothing to do with him or his coaching. It has to do with broader football philosophies and stuff. But anyway, we've talked about that. We'll talk about it again, I'm sure. Let's talk a little bit more about something that's present at the moment. And the season is far from over. We're entering what I like to call the home stretch, which is that 6-7 game period where the playoff picture starts to snap into focus. Teams that are on the bubble start to wilt away. Fake fraudulent teams start to fall off, and the whole thing starts to come together. This is really, truly the most important stretch of football in the year, because you can clinch your playoff spot. You can win your division. You can do all these things. Your destiny is in your own hands. We have games against, I'm just going to fire them off, and then I want to hear your guys' general impression of how you think this is going to go, the home stretch, okay? We've got the Lions. We've got the Steelers. We've got the Bears away. We've got the Rams, Packers away, and we close out the season at home against the Bears. On its face, and I'll just react quickly at first, and then I want to hear from you guys. On its face, to me, the only team I'm really scared of in any way, and I use that term loosely, I'm not scared of them because we just beat them, it's the Packers. I mean, the Packers are a very good football team. The rest of those teams all have major warts. And I wouldn't have said that about the Rams a couple of weeks ago, but they're on a 3-game losing streak. They look shaky. Stafford looks injured as hell. They've gone through receivers. Their receivers have gone through the meat grinder. They're down to like their 5th running. I mean, they're a mess right now. So I wouldn't even put them as a team that I'm particularly worried about. Knowing all the things we know about the Vikings, though, it's possible all these games are close. I really don't know what to expect from us. But
so
I do think that these games are all, I mean this, all winnable. I think every single one of these games is winnable.
Yeah.
They will be favored.
The only team you're scared of, Greg, is the team that we lost to. But go ahead, Nick. I mean, a team we already beat.
No, I know. That's what I said. Yeah, I totally agree. I completely agree. I that's the only team I'm worried about. But we just beat them. So
I think looking ahead to the schedule, this is where DVOA can be very helpful, because it's one of the few statistics out there that opponent adjusts. So the Vikings are 5-6, but they're a top 10 team by DVOA. They're 10th. They had what, the 4th hardest schedule going into the year, because we didn't know some of these teams were going to be so good when we played them. They have now the 5th easiest schedule going forward. I think they will be favorites in 4, if not 5 of these remaining 6 games. Rams game only because they're in a bit of a free fall, and that's a home game. I think they'll be favored in every other game other than at Lambeau. And it totally wouldn't surprise me if the Vikings pulled off an upset in Lambeau as well, because they already beat the Packers once. Divisional games are always weird. Zimmer and LaFleur kind of know each other in a way that other coaches don't. So those games are always kind of weird, funky, and they don't go the way you expect them to. So 4-2, 5-1 even, I think, are completely within reach At the same time, this being the Vikings, let's not forget, like, yeah, we did beat the Lions once already. It took a 56-yard like miracle kick to do it.
Yep.
So,
and we'll get to the Lions in a minute, but I agree with you 100%. I mean, I really think these games are winnable.
And big picture, right? We are one of 5 teams in the NFC right now that has 5 wins. There are 5 teams, including us, and that's where
and the Rams, who are in front of us, are on the downturn, and we play them, so we can add a loss to their record too.
Yeah, and so the other 2 wild card teams right now are the Rams and the 49ers. So we don't have the tiebreaker against the 49ers, obviously. So the Rams we would need to make up 2 games on the Rams, which beating them would come a long way towards that, right? But even still, I mean, like we talked about, this is 4 very winnable games. If we go 4-2 over this stretch, I'm pretty confident that we make the playoffs as a team. 9-7 is going to be good enough with all of these other teams in there, because like the Washington football team, not very good. The Eagles, not very, I don't think any of the other teams but the Saints are like any good.
Atlanta's finally falling apart.
And the Saints don't really have a quarterback. The only concern I have is like the Bears games, because I hate playing the Bears, and we always seem to lose a stupid game to the Bears, even if on paper, like, you would never expect us to lose to the Bears.
They're so bad.
It's just so annoying. And they're so bad.
They're so bad.
We lost to them when Chase Daniel was their quarterback.
That's true.
So, like...
Speaking of so bad, should we talk about the Lions?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's just wrap this thought up real quick, and we'll get to the Lions here.
The Lions are so bad, man. The Lions.
wait! I want to talk so much.
So bad. I know
they're horrible.
Talk off the opponent so you don't look bad when you lose anyway. But man, the Lions are so bad.
I just want to put a tag on this and say I said it last week, and I'm going to say it again. Minnesota Vikings are going to make the playoffs. I just want to finish that with that thought. Now let's trash.
A lot of negativity, so important to keep that in mind. Yep. Like, who is the best player for the Lions right now? It's hard. Like Taylor Decker.
Well, it was DeAndre Swift. It's DeAndre Swift. Totally Swift. DeAndre Swift, but he's gone.
Who's the rookie defensive lineman?
I can't name
Unzurike.
I can name Jared Goff and DeAndre Swift.
Hawkinson's pretty good.
Hawkinson. Oh yeah, of course.
TJ Hawkinson.
This is a team like they don't have many good players, and the good players they have are like injured reserve, like Okwara, Ragnow. Like, you were hoping maybe that
they're so bad.
Okuda could bounce back. Yeah, every aspect of this team is bad.
What do we even talk about previewing this game? I mean, the only thing we can say is that we played these guys already, and they played us tough. Now, that's the one thing you can say about the Lions this year, is that they do seem to play hard, and I will give them credit for that.
We have seen Goff throw beautiful balls before. He can be a good quarterback when you set things up for him. The problem right now is their offensive line is banged up, and their wide receivers are also banged up, and they're trash. Like, they're so bad.
Jared Goff is like a C- version of Kirk Cousins. he's like a guy who has to have everything absolutely perfect. I mean, absolutely perfect, and he can actually do some stuff.
Yep.
If anything is going wrong, that guy is a complete zero. He's a negative.
I don't have much analysis for this game, because it's not like, you can exploit this weakness, because like it's all weaknesses. You can pass on them, short, long, like run on them, like whatever you want, man.
Yeah, they're horrible.
This is gonna look so bad when we lose by like multiple.
I mean, that's the thing, is it's like they play with heart as a team.
That's all you can say.
That's what you can say about them, and it's kind of funny, but like they do care, and that matters. In football.
Just to give our listeners a little peek behind the curtain here as to how little we have to say about this team. We have notes for each other that, we kind of keep in line. Here's our notes this week for the Lions. Steamroll these pathetic losers. Jared Goff sucks. The Lions suck. Now, I wrote that as like placeholder notes. Matt and Nick had nothing to add. So that sums it up. There's nothing to talk about with the Lions here. We can't take it.
Like,
I have nothing.
Their best players, you're like, they're fine. Like, TJ Hawkinson is a good all-around tight end. Like, he's probably their player on their team approaching good. Penny Sewell, promising, right? Obviously,
Sure, very
like
promising,
a
yes.
freak, but like he's a rookie and he hasn't played all that well. And now they're asking him to play right tackle, which I think is a huge mistake. Taylor Decker, I think is overrated.
Okay, this is perfect Lions bullshit right here. And
Like-
I ranted about these guys the last time we played them, and I'm going to do it again. This is a great example of just how horrible this organization is and how they'll never get it right. You have P.I. Sinel, that guy, Sewell, he's possibly once in a generation kind of tackle. Okay, that type of player, if he can play left tackle, you leave him at left tackle. You don't fucking move him. You don't move him. You cannot find players like that. They don't drop out of trees. Okay, you drafted him top of the draft. You drafted him. Why would you do a positional switch in a season that doesn't matter? The season's gone. It's over. Keep that kid at left tackle. Cultivate that talent. And that's the exact kind of thing that keeps the Lions from ever being relevant. It's because they have stupid coaches like Dan Campbell who do bullshit like that with great players. It sucks. I hate this team. I hate playing them. I hate them in their division. Just get rid of these guys. God, they're the worst. I hate the Lions so much.
Wow, that's an all-timer, man.
I feel bad. I feel
so
bad
much
for
more
their
emotion than I
fans.
could ever conjure. I'm like just so apathetic about the Lions.
They make me mad because their fans show up, man. Their fans show up for it's a generational sickness these guys have that they show up year after year after. They never have a shot. Never. They never had a chance. It's over by week 5 every year for these guys.
How many playoff games have they won in like the Super Bowl era?
One. I'm 90% sure that they've won one playoff game in like 60 years. And you can fact check me on that. Shame me on Twitter or whatever. I'm 90% sure it's one game. And I think it was like,
I forget. They have one win in the Super Bowl era.
There you go.
91.
Yes.
Yep. It was one of the few good quarterbacks they've had is I'm forgetting his name.
Mitchell.
But
Mitchell. That was Barry
Mitchell,
Sanders, obviously.
Yeah, Barry Sanders was the running back. Anyway, I feel bad for their fans. And I want to beat them. I want to beat them because they're terrible and they're pathetic and we need to win. But
yeah.
Okay, let's move on from the Lions. There's nothing else to talk about these guys. I think it's time. Boys.
I think it's not.
I think it is.
Man.
I think it is. I've been waiting for this one. It's time, ladies and gentlemen. We're all in a fantasy league together, and we know that you don't want to hear us talk about our fantasy teams, but we desperately want to discuss them. So every week, we dedicate 15 seconds of this show to fantasy football. I can't wait for my 5 seconds this week. Each of us gets 5. Matt, go.
All right, so I scored less than 75% of my optimal points, and I still had the highest score in the league this week.
Nick, go.
I am going to win the rest of my games. That's all I'll say.
I beat you, Nick, I beat you. That's all I have to say about that one.
Good
guys.
Man, I think that was over 5 seconds. We might need to cut that.
Oh man, it felt good. It felt so good.
I think we have to cut that out, Greg. I think that's right. We went over. You broke the rules.
Hey, you guys had no problem going over your week, so we're keeping it. We're keeping that one in. All right. Do we have anything we want to say to wrap things up this week?
I just want to say Anthony Barr. Nick mentioned it earlier. That bull rush he had against that guard was awesome. He also made a one-handed tackle through Trent Williams. That was awesome.
Yeah,
he's cool.
Barr's good. I never want to hear about like your Eric Wilsons and your little Troy Dyes and your undersized 200-pound guys who make one good play in the passing game. That like, oh yeah, you could just replace Barr with that guy. Like, I'm sick of it.
Yeah, me too. I will say on a personal note, and not to make things too sad or anything, but I genuinely feel true sorrow for what Everson Griffin's going through right now. I wish him nothing but the best. I wish him mental health. I really hope, I don't even care if he never plays another snap of football in his life. I really hope that he figures this out because it really breaks my heart. He's
Yeah,
one of my
seriously.
favorite athletes ever, and
One of my all-time favorite Vikings. Yeah.
all-time favorite Vikings and all-time favorite people. I've just really enjoyed him over the years, and it just really breaks my heart to see him struggling. And I hope that if you're listening to this and you have things going on in your mind, or you feel like you need someone to talk to, please talk to someone. Please talk to someone, because it's important to take care of your mental health. Okay. Guys, where can we find you on Twitter? And each of us has a handle down beneath our videos on YouTube if you're watching us, so you don't even need this section. But for our listeners, where can we find each other on Twitter? Nick, where can we find you?
I'm at Nick Olson NFL on Twitter.
Matt?
Yeah, so we got snazzy now. We upgraded the graphics game on the YouTube, but I'm at Fries Football.
At Fries Football. And I am at You've Been Gregg with 3 G's. You can find me on Twitter or on Instagram. Guys, you can find us all as a group at Kindred Skulls on Twitter. We're available on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube by searching for Kindred Skulls. And Matt's been putting up a really, really awesome content lately on there. You should really check it out. He has a whole 45-minute video where he just goes through our Packers win. It's really cool. So check it out. And we're going to have more and more as we go here. So any last words, guys?
We don't do ads. We don't have a Patreon. We're not charging you for this stuff. We really only do it because we like seeing the audience grow, and we like hearing from our listeners. So,
and we like each other.
Shut up.
And we like each other. We love each other.
That's true.
Digital hugs.
If you want to subscribe, give us a 5-star review, whatever. It warms the cockles of our hearts.
Warms our cocks. Cockles.
Jesus Christ, Greg, the rating.
Yeah. I'm not doing the hug now. I'm
digital hugging you with my cock. Here
no,
we go.
Goodbye. I love you.
Goodbye.
You made it weird.
All right, school Vikings, guys.
Another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. And we'll all cheer on behind, and we'll score the